What is up, everybody? Technicals here. Today, talking exhaust again. It's hot. It's really hot right now. It's summertime here in the southeast United States. Temperatures are starting to get into that 90 Fahrenheit range. And down here where I live, it'll go to 100, just a little over 100. We tried to get ahead of that problem, as you can see in some of the other videos that I put out on the channel, by getting creative with our exhaust, moving things around. But when the temperatures get that high, there's only so much you can do, and then you're going to have to start turning down clocks. And I made some recent changes that have allowed me to bring my temperatures down significantly, and so I'm going to go through that now because I know a lot of people are struggling with exhaust and trying to get the heat out of their rigs so it doesn't make their living conditions unbearable or potentially damage their cards. So let's get into some of the things that I did to cool these things down right now.
The Technicals.
Alright, so first up, I'm going to basically sketch out what I intended to do from the beginning as sort of a guide so you can kind of see in your head what I'm seeing. So let's take a look right now, and this is basically what I was doing. So we all know that ant miners have this square configuration. Now, if you're familiar with the inside of an ant miner, it's got the fan on the front and the fan on the back here, and air passes through it. Inside the ant miner are the boards with all the ASIC chips on them, okay? Each one of them has a lot of heat sinks on them. It looks like a piece of coral or something like that. And so those fans are designed to move a massive amount of air over those heat sinks and cool off the ASIC chips. That was the basic idea. What I intended to do was to create in my room, in the farm room itself, the farm room's kind of a square like this, and the rows of rigs here like so. You gotta be kidding me. So the rows of rigs are like so. We got basically three rows of rigs. We have the fresh air intake here, and then we have the exhausts here on the back. And so you'll see that in the video, the exhaust taking the air outside. What we wanted to do is bring the air over them and exhaust it. The main problem we were having is here's the door to the rig room. So the problem we were having is this blank area over here was causing what I call the vortex. Air was sort of swirling up over here, and it was causing not everything to flow through, so air was kind of getting stagnant in certain areas, and certain rigs were heating up too much. So as you'll see, what we did is we sort of rudimentarily walled off everything here to make it like one big ant miner. So we had intake here and exhaust here. So let's take a look at some footage now. Alright, so you may have remembered the video I put out not long ago where I do sort of a farm walkthrough. These are the intake fans pushing the cool fresh air in. I've since added some filtration to it. But skipping ahead, the ceiling was really the first part of this process. I needed to close up that room. If you know my rig farm, you know that I have an open warehouse with really, really high ceilings. You can kind of get a sense of that here in the beginning. It was just letting the air kind of flow out of the top of the warehouse. And in the wintertime, that was great. It kept the warehouse nice and warm, but in the summer it just eventually started to recycle all that air and get progressively hotter. So what I did was I added a ceiling to this little room. One of the first things to do was to start cutting holes in the wall for fresh air to come in. As you can see here, I held a shop vac up while I was sawing away at the drywall to keep any of that dust, or most of the dust, from just kind of flying through. Here you can see I've got the grills on there. I got some furnace grills to put on, and I'm testing airflow now. Throw it in, sucks it right up, and that's just with the box fan on the other side. So what I did here with one of the existing exhaust ports, I redid all of them. I moved the fans further up, higher up, right? That was their old configuration. They weren't really pointed at where the air should be coming from, and so I needed to reorient them. That's where the cold air is coming in. You can see the holes in the wall allowing for the fresh air to come in. I needed to reorient the exhaust fans to sort of accept it much easier. And so here's the current configuration. I put these elbows, these 10-inch elbows on the fans just to give it a little sort of more of a laminar flow to catch that hot exhaust air and take it right out. Ran these vinyl tubes that came with the fans over to the exhaust ports. I prefer to use rigid, but these allow me to sort of snake it where it needs to go. So currently I have 3 of those 10-inch exhaust ports pulling it all out. Even with that, it's still only about 12 to 15,000 CFM worth of exhaust. This seems to work right now. If the combination of this and downclocking the cards and taking out some of the hotter elements. This was last week. You can see the ant miners miners there. I'm exhausting them out of the ceiling. I've actually since moved 2 of the ant miners down because they just put out so much exhaust. I need to get them sort of out of the situation entirely. So here's the walls I was talking about. What I did is, you can see there's the rigs in there, and then I have these giant insulation foam boards just walling it off. They're not secured in any way. They're just propped up against and pinched in place, and that's just to keep the majority of the air from circulating in there, creating the vortex. Keeping all the air flowing in one single direction. And you know what? It works. The air is coming in that's cold. Here I am testing it with vape. I know, don't test it with vape. The vape's going to collect on it. You know, compared to the dust and junk that's floating through the air anyway, the vape's not going to make that big of a difference. But that's just to test the airflow to see if the vortex is happening. Those fans stay running the entire time. They're loud as hell. This catches it all sort of at the end of the process, as high up as we can get in the farm, because that hot air is going to rise, and I want to suck out the hottest amount of air, the hottest of the air, versus sucking it down low and pulling out the potentially colder air. You can see here, testing it with vape, sucks it right up. That is the wall situation, making it into one big ant miner essentially. Again, these thermal cameras are just fantastic. It shows you where the hot spots are on cards, and so if you put your cards too close together without adequate airflow, that heat's just going to build up over and over again. These are Vegas, so they're going to run hot regardless, and it just makes sense. If you getting one of these cameras, if you got a lot of GPUs, is just a no-brainer, because you're going to be able to see where that heat collects, and all you got to do is point a fan at it, and you can watch in real time as the temperatures come down. You can also use a laser thermometer as well, but these cameras are just super handy. Let's run over to Simple Mining and see what I did to the overclocks. All right, so if you look at the Simple Mining dashboard here, you can see my temperatures are quite high, but it's really hot out today. It's 88 Fahrenheit as of current right now, and it'll probably get up to 90 just like it did yesterday. But with those ambient temperatures outside, I'm pretty happy with these. I don't have any rigs kissing the 80-degree mark. Most of them I did put back on Equihash, and the Ethereum rigs, or the AMD rigs rather, still running on Ethereum. There's going to be some cards in there that don't have, you know, quite the best optimization. The 1060R2 rig, several cards, or 2 or 3 cards in that 75 to 77 range. If we go down here to Trash AM, you can see it's that one card at 78. The rest of them are at like low 60s, mid 60s. Going up here, 1080 Ti, I actually pulled off 4 cards from that. Those most in the low 70s, 1 card just running at 77. So it's, most of the cards are okay. It's just 1 or 2 problem child cards. Maybe there's some airflow issues around that particular card. Maybe something's blocking it. Maybe it's too close to another card. That's just something I have to go through and address. I'm still pretty happy with these. You can also see on my AMD rigs, I put the power stages way down. Let's see if I can't bring myself into a smaller position here and make myself really tiny. If you look at the power stages, I've got 2 of the AMD rigs on a power stage of 2. I've got 1 of them on a power stage 3. Even though I have the Devils downclocked to 1000 and 2100 and on a 3 power stage, I'm still getting about 27 point low mega hash per second. I've only capped them out at around 29 and a half. I think that's pretty good. If we take a look at the overclocks here, 1000, 2100 at a core undervolting of 800. I think this is pretty good. It keeps the temperatures under control. I don't have to worry about them running away. These stay around to 24, could be better, but hey, I got to keep the temperatures down. I've got to bring myself into a sustainable method to where I'm not constantly babysitting the cars 24/7. And I think this is what a lot of people run into when they start getting beyond 2 or 3 rigs. You start looking for ways to make things more sustainable. If you've only got 1 rig or 2 rigs, and I did this in the very beginning, you're sitting there tinkering with it all the time, and you know, you're trying to get that extra little efficiency out of it, that extra 0.001 mega hash. With this many cards, this many rigs, I don't have time for it. I really don't. I could maximize them out every step of the way, but if I go and switch them onto a new algorithm, then I'm going to have to go back through and adjust accordingly if one little thing changes. So I'm going for sustainability, especially in the summertime when it's so hot outside. I just need them to be, you know, cool for the next maybe 2 or 3 months, and then when temperatures start coming down in the fall, then I can start cranking them back up. You've probably noticed too how low the souls are on the 1060 rigs. That's just for me downclocking them and bringing them down to about 70 watts per card. We have R1 overclock too, 100, 670. Now I know everybody, before you come out of the woodwork and start telling me about what I should overclock it to, trust me, I've tried virtually every combination of overclocks on these 1060 rigs. I believe it has to do with, because if you look here, it doesn't break out the souls for you. The silicon lottery on these things is just awful. I've got them all mixed up, and this is kind of a downfall of rigs with a lot of cards on them. If you've got a bunch of different memory types, they're not going to respond correctly, and unless you go through and overclock each one individually in simple mining, then you're going to have cards that sort of lose a lot of hash, some that maximize out. You're going to cause crashes. The smart thing for me to do would be to break up all the rigs, identify the memory type in each and every one, and put the similar memory types all in one rig. That way I can maximize the hash. And with this many cards, if I went through and did all that, I could probably maybe get another 1,000 souls out of it. I don't see how I couldn't. But I've got them all hooked up, and pulling them all out, man, that would just be a nightmare. So I'm cool with that right now. I'm always tweaking and adjusting here and there. As you can see, 1060R3 is up at a 75. All the rest are at 70. And that's because this one at 75 watts, it's staying the highest temperature card, 71 degrees. Here at the bottom, Trash NV. I got my Gigabyte cards back from RMA. The 1080, I didn't have to send off to RMA. It was leaking thermal fluid as well. So this one's actually swelled up to a 9-card rig. Not bad. It's all mixed up, so all the overclocks, as you can see here, I have to sort of adjust. But the name of the game right now in the summertime is maximizing your exhaust, getting as much hot air out as you possibly can, and really just downclocking, doing whatever you have to do to keep those temperatures from climbing too high. So that's my exhaust update for the summer. It's not pretty. It's not really sort of a permanent solution. Yeah, it's really janky. I know it's redneck engineering, but that's kind of the way I do things. It serves the purpose, though. It blocks the air from going in and creating the vortex in the side of the room. It creates more of that virtual amp miner that we were talking about. And when temperatures start to come down in the fall, what we can do is take that foam board out, take the ceiling off, and to resume what we were doing previously. The cold air on the outside will be a welcome change when we get back to it. Now, if you've got a smaller amount of rigs or you've got them in a tighter space, check out Brandon Coin's channel. He's another cryptocurrency mining channel. A lot of you came over here from him, but if you haven't heard of him, check out his channel. It's Brandon Coin. He recently put his rigs inside of hydroponic grow tents, the kind you usually grow plants in for hydroponic purposes. They actually work really well for trapping in all the heat, and that way you can exhaust it out very readily. Brandon also gave me a great tip. He said that one of the people in his Discord was saying that you need a 30-to-1 ratio in terms of your square footage versus your exhaust. So what he did was he calculated that out based on the size of his tent and put in a fan that would be able to handle that 30-to-1 ratio, exhausting the air out as much as possible, just overkilling it on exhaust, and he's able to keep his rig temperatures down considerably. Me, on the other hand, when I did the calculation, considering the size of my farm, I calculated it out. I would need between 40 and 45,000 CFM of exhaust to meet that 30-to-1 ratio. I'm not going to hit that. It's just not going to happen. I've got too much square footage in there, and putting all my rigs and my racks inside of grow tents, that's just going to be so cumbersome trying to get them inside. And if I even tried to make something with a tarp or some kind of reflective thermal blanket or something like that, it would just be a nightmare. Something would eventually touch a card and something hot would touch it. I'm just not going to take that risk. I'd rather downclock the cards, enter a period of just stability mining. I know I'm not getting the best hash rates. I know that. But when the cold weather returns, then we can turn these puppies back up. On top of that, I know some of you are wondering, did I turn the AC units back on? Here and there, I did. I still have 2 of those AC units in there, and sometimes when it gets exceptionally hot, or when I'm working on things and the vortex is created, or I just need to take the edge off, then yeah, I'll throw one of them on. I had those outlets put in there specifically for those AC units. So they're dedicated circuits, 20 amp circuits that can run those AC units. They're dedicated. I've already got the exhaust ducted for them. And so if I need to take the edge off, yeah, I'll throw one on. I know a lot of people are hyper concerned about power usage and watts, and it does kill your profits a little bit running these AC units, because that's 1,500 watts. That's a whole mining rig worth of power that's being used just to cool things down, and it really doesn't even help that much. But it does take the edge off, especially if you've got an exceptionally hot rig. You can point that thing at it generally and take those temperatures down just a little bit. So I'd love to know in the comments below what you guys are doing for your exhaust method in the hot summer, if you're here in the United States or the Northern Hemisphere for that matter, and temperatures where you are creep up to a level that makes it difficult for you to continue operating your mining rigs. So check the description for all the giveaways we have going on. Join me Sunday night, 6 p.m., where we go over our mining intake and do giveaways and all that kind of stuff. Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the YouTube channel. And until next time,
Vortex.